Can we talk for a minute about our Integrating Heart and Mind workshop?
Absolutely. I'm excited. It's coming up in the fall of 2024.
I'm so excited. We changed the format to make it more accessible to people with like work schedules and personal schedules. And so this time we're going to do it 3 hours on a Friday afternoon or evening, depending on where you're at, and 5 hours on Saturday for 2 different weeks in September.
Yeah, it's so great. Like if you're finding yourself stuck in like sticky bad patterns or having communication issues or something like that, or if you want to just like get closer and trust yourself or your partner more, this is the workshop for you.
Yeah, and individuals are welcome, couples are welcome. If you're interested in really thinking through how to serve yourself well inside of your relationships, then we've built a workshop that will support you in finding the ways that are just right for you.
To sign up, head over to our website at whydoesmypartner.com/events.
We hope you'll join us. Welcome to the Why Does My Partner podcast.
I'm Jules.
I'm Vicky.
And I'm Rebecca. We're your hosts. We're also couples therapists and messy humans bumbling through our own relationships every day.
We met at a training, and our secret sauce is that we and our partners became fast friends. Between us, we have more than 40 years of experience holding hard relational questions with our clients. We're going to bring those questions here.
And together, we're going to take a stab at answering those questions. This podcast is not a substitute for couples therapy. If something you hear in this podcast stirs something deep within you about your relationship, reach out to a couples therapist in your area.
We also love to hear your questions, so don't forget to go over to whydoesmypartner.com to leave a question of your own. Here's today's question.
Welcome back. I'm Jules.
I'm Vicky.
And I'm Rebecca. And today's question comes from a listener who says, hello, I am in a neurodiverse relationship. I'm diagnosed with ASD and ADHD, and my partner is neurotypical. Can you do a podcast addressing communication challenges in relationships like ours? My partner wants to work on our relationship by talking and needs physical affection all the time, whereas I do not. Why does my partner take these differences personally?
Before we answer, I'd like to give the partner props that the partner wants to work on the relationship at all. I feel like a lot of our questions are like one wants to work on it and one may not have that perception. Like we don't know that the other one does. And so awesome that there's a desire and just like bummer that there's a difference between the desires of the work, I mean.
Of how the work happens, not between the desires, right?
Yeah.
Because the person who's asking the question is also desiring to make this better and different. It's just how is different between these two folks.
Yeah.
So that's the big challenge, right?
Yeah.
Is that how am I processing information? What feels too much for my system? What feels too much for your system? It's going to be different.
Right, because we're going to have, especially in neurotypical relationships or relationships where one partner is neurotypical and the other is more, is not. Wait, what am I saying? In a relationship where someone is neurotypical and someone is more neurodiverse. That's what I'm trying to say. What we're going to find in those relationships is that there are just really different ways of perceiving, right? Because like for somebody who has there's something called like monotropism. Have you heard of this? Monotropism is like it's a form. It's a way of getting like hyper focused and fixated on one thing, right? Okay. Like, I don't know, perhaps keeping a pantry really organized. But
okay, that is also true. I'm just saying. I don't hyper fixate on neurobiological interest of the moment. I could spend 20 hours in a single week. No. I could spend 20 hours in a single week, like
obsessively looking at research on hippocampal function in
Right.
teeny tiny little areas of like, what exactly are the cells in this area of the hippocampus? How are they processing information, and what information is coming to them? And what is the anatomy of that? Wait, who's talking to that part? Where does that come from? That's not
And
my gosh.
that type of
like, that's what I
focus,
do.
but that type of focus, right? It's a drive. It gets you places. It's amazing. It's like super. And also it means that there's caloric energy that's not going somewhere else.
Yes.
Oh my God. I mean, when I get into a space like that, I will like not answer emails all week. I have no idea what anybody's saying. I like put it down to be with my kid. I put it down to like make dinner, but I'll procrastinate about all sorts of other things because I'll get into this space of like, no, I cannot let this go until I understand what's happening with the spatial orientation of this area of the hippocampus.
Right.
Wow.
Like that's what my brain does.
Totally.
I just always thought I honestly, so I've never been diagnosed with anything because I've never gone through an assessment. My husband and I actually keep talking about that because my daughter's recently gone through assessment, and he's like, honey, would you be willing to go through an assessment? Because I think maybe there's some differences happening. So I'm in the process of like figuring out when can I actually make that happen and stuff, because I'm accepting of that possibility, and like, sure, I'll get an assessment and find out, you know, what's happening, and maybe more information about working with my brain in a way that really works for our family. And he is ADHD and dyslexia, and our daughter has 4 different neurodiverse diagnoses. So we have quite a lot of that in our house, and I think that does make it different though than this question.
It does,
because everybody in our home is neurodiverse.
right? In my home,
maybe.
it's a little bit more like there's at least half of us that are more neurodiverse than others. But I actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think everybody has some kind of processing difference in my home, but they're all differences, right? And so it could be really easy to take it all personally because we're all kind of focused in and noticing different things. And that's the piece about this, is that inside of having all of these differences, we also carry a lot of expectations around,
You're saying this,
right? Like around what relationships are going to be, or how people are going to show up, or how we work on our relationships, or how much touch there is, or how much we talk about, or
how people should function, what should be easy.
right. And we have ideas based on a lot of like neurotypical models, or not even neurotypical models, Hollywood models. Let's just call it that. Right?
Totally. Where I should expect you to want to be close to me in this particular way. And
the way that looks in Hallmark movies.
Yes, it could be. It could be. Yeah, it depends. It depends on what we're wanting. Some people want it to look like Hallmark movies, and sometimes people want it to look, you know, different than that, more like 1950s typical. Right. They want it to look like Don Draper, you know, to use another Hollywood style example. So there are plenty of people who have expectations going in about how we're going to do this, how we're going to have repair conversations, how we're going to be close. What closeness even feels like to you should be what it feels like to me. That's what we go in with.
But there's grief there, right? Like we have to focus in on that grief because there is no one way. Like put any two people together, and there's no, like, if we can't have unspoken expectations and think we're going to meet each other in the same place.
Right. Exactly. Because different stuff is gonna.
Right. That's a great way to phrase it, though. Let's repeat that. We can't have unspoken expectations and still meet each other at the same place.
Yeah.
Which is what I want. I was about to say everyone wants, and then I realized I can't speak for everyone else. But I really do want that. I want to not have to speak about it.
Of course,
you so nice.
It would magically happen.
So much easier.
Right?
Of course you want that. That's not a thing, but of course you want that.
It's not a thing. Thanks for reality. But
it makes sense. Like, it really does make sense that that's what's wanted. Right? Because it would take a lot less energy if we could be met in that way.
Yeah. Well, it also, maybe this is just me and who knows what in my history, that feels like love. that
Mm.
it just magically happens and I don't have to ask for it or talk about it.
Oh, for you, that's love?
Uh-huh. I
Huh.
think so, but that's
Interesting.
new to me too right now. So there's
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so if I have to ask for it, it's not love? Or if I have to say what I need, it's not love?
It's not as much love. It's still love, but
Huh.
it's not as much.
Right. So there's an
Hmm.
expectation built in around that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas maybe I grew up in a home where the stuff inside of me says, well, if we're talking a lot, if we're talking about our relationship, that's love. And if we're not talking
Oh.
Mhm.
about it, then that is not loving.
Mhm.
Right, and for somebody else, it may be, if we have to talk about it a lot, you're not seeing me as I need to be seen because I actually don't wanna talk about it a lot, so you're not being
Right.
loving. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying,
Mhm.
that that's always the thought, I'm just saying that it can be perceived that
It can
way.
totally
And
be.
when we're saying, "Why is your partner taking it personally?" Well, my guess is the personal bit is something around this.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, there's a longing to have it be more similar than it is between
Oh,
you
yeah.
about how you process information." And rather than saying, "You know what? That is not true for our marriage. We have bigger differences than I was hoping for.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's just the truth of who I married, and that's the
Yeah.
truth of me." And it's not like, I wanna be careful actually about saying like, "Oh, let's" I don't know what diagnosis I might come back with, but let's say I come back and then it's not like I'm asking Adam, "Oh, could you accept me where I am?" I'm saying, "Could we all accept us where we are?"
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that we process this information differently. Because whatever's going on, like, his ADHD is maybe different than how mine would show up.
Totally.
Right.
Because there's
Does
different
that make
kinds.
sense?
There's the kind that get more hyper, and then there's kinds that get that seem on the inside like they're less attentive, right?
Mhm.
Right.
But there's
Mhm.
different kinds of foci. And so part of it
Mhm.
is about what's happening for you. How do you experience the world? And here's what's happening for me and how I experience the world. And here's what my needs are. And how do we have a
Right.
conversation about this that doesn't feel
And
too
it's
much?
right, and it's less about, "I accept you're different,"
Mhm.
more about, "I accept we are
Right.
different."
Mhm.
And by the way, I think neurodiverse couples have a leg up here because they might need to talk about this. And
Mhm.
neurotypical couples where both
Typical.
people are more neurotypical still have differences. They just aren't really
Thank you.
talking about them.
I was just gonna say that. So not to
Mhm.
minimize or change the question here, but,
Mhm.
I finally realized, and I said it to Gabe literally yesterday, that when I get overwhelmed, and you guys
Mhm.
know this, I don't know if our audience does. When I get very overwhelmed and unintegrated, my brain goes into shutdown, and when
Mhm.
he gets very overwhelmed, he goes into fix it or figure it out,
Mhm.
which can make him very awesome. I do love that part, and it drives him bonkers that my brain shuts down. It is
Mhm.
very, very challenging for him. He's getting better at it, and we articulate it now, Rebecca, like you're saying. We actually have conversations now, and sometimes he will look at me very calmly and say, "You can do this. Stay with me, don't shut down." And one time I looked at him very nicely and I said, "No, I cannot. So do I need to take a timeout? Do I need to actually
Mhm.
leave the
Mhm.
room? Because I cannot engage right now. My brain will not do it." So
Mhm.
it doesn't always have to be about neurodiversity. That's just about when we get too overwhelmed by something, we
Totally.
function
Mhm.
differently,
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
but
I
not everyone's having those conversations.
yeah.
Mhm. So I think it does require conversations. I think it
Mhm.
also it really helps when the communication difficulties are super, super normal, and it helps to know a little bit about what you need to ask for to
Mhm.
support your own system, and that may require some journaling and some a
Sure.
reflection space, and even if you need, somebody to bounce that off with, going and seeing somebody on your own a little
Mhm.
bit of, here's the needs that I have, and and then bringing that together and finding creative solutions. So I'm thinking about a couple I actually just finished doing an intensive with. And in this situation, there was a need for a really, really different way of bringing up difficult stuff. For one, the rejection sensitivity was so intense that even bringing up that there was maybe a problem or maybe even a difference in how they wanted something in the house to go was so floody. It was too much for them to be able to do a conversation, but they didn't want to not have the conversation. So face-to-face was problems. So they decided to write each other letters for the first 4 to 5 exchanges back and forth before they started bringing it into real time.
I love that.
And that really helped because they could read it, freak out, calm down, write back, right? And the freak out was way less. And if it was face-to-face, eye contact was too much and the body language was too much. So I'm just noticing we could get kind of creative with how.
Yeah, we could get really creative with the how. And I think that's part of really falling in love with your neurodiversity and loving what is so special about who you are, and loving your partner is that you start learning really how do I attend to me? What do I need to do? If I want to stay inside this conversation, are there things if I stim in certain ways, is that going to help me stay? If I, do I need to decompress and be alone for a certain amount of time first? What are the things and how does that affect timing? And how does that affect the grief of maybe the way things are different, or the fact that maybe touch doesn't feel so great for me, or it feels really good for you, or we have these differences and we need to make spaces to grieve what's not the same, and also to understand not the same doesn't mean that we're necessarily moving towards rejection. It means not the same. Right. And inside of some neurotypical spaces, and even some really neurodiverse spaces and also neurotypical spaces, rejection is definitely something that I think a lot of us are really sensitive to. And so that might be playing into why we or our partners might be taking things personally, is because we're sensitive to this idea of, or something about rejection.
Yeah. So it's a complex space you're entering into, and what I'm hearing you say, Rebecca, is a kind of map of the how to do what's the principle underneath that's going to hold us.
That's good.
And that's actually relatively simple.
It really is.
Which is, there's a big difference here. Let's face that together and grieve what we need to, and also create what we need to answer this truth about there being a difference here. Am I getting it?
You're totally getting it, so that we can find us, so that we can, right? Because it's not about you or me, it's about us.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have to learn the us. We have to learn the us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Good place to land it for today.
Yeah.
I think so.
All right. Take care of yourselves.
See y'all soon.
Bye-bye.
That wraps up this week's episode. Join us again next week for another Why Does My Partner?
We hope that you continue to listen wherever you get your audio, and that you'll follow the show.
To go deeper, join us at one of our workshops. You'll find our next date at whydoesmypartner.com.
Did you know you can ask us your questions?
Your questions are relational gold.
Go to whydoesmypartner.com to either write in or record your question for a future episode.
And here's some gratitudes. Thanks to Al Hoberman, our sound editor and podcast production magic maker.
Thanks to every one of you who has joined us for our workshops in the past. We've learned so much from all of you.
And thanks to everyone who's reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts. Your reviews help others to find the show.
Take care of each other best you can.
See you next time.